A crisp copper disc might not look like much at first glance. But what if I told you that the unassuming 1971-cent piece could be hiding stories worth thousands of dollars? Picture this. You're sorting through loose change, and a gleam catches your eye. An error so subtle that most people would pass right over it. That tiny moment of recognition can send a thrill through any collector's veins, especially when you realize you're holding a piece of American minting history that's both rare and astonishingly valuable. Today, we're peeling back the layers on the 1970 penny, revealing everything from its origins in a tumultuous era to the quirks that make certain examples the holy grails of numismatics. Back in 1970, the United States was navigating a landscape of social change and economic uncertainty. The penny itself had been a mainstay since 1909, but by 1970, debates were swirling about rising production costs and whether the 1-cent coin could survive another half-centenary. Struck at both Philadelphia and Denver, these coins seemed on the surface to follow tradition. President Lincoln's profile on the obverse, the wheat ears design on the reverse. Yet, that very year witnessed subtle fluctuations in metal composition, hub designs, and minting procedures. Each variation tells a story of the mint's experimentation, budget constraints, and evolving technology. Holding a 1970 penny is like grasping a fragment of that turbulent moment in U.S. history. If you're learning to spot a valuable 1970 penny, the first step is understanding what sets a key example apart. The most famous variant is the 1970 double die obverse from the Philadelphia Mint, cataloged as DDR-001. On these coins, Lincoln's features, his jawline, hair, even the inscription Liberty, are visibly duplicated, as if stamped twice in a slightly offset layer. This doubling creates a ghost-like outline that immediately signals something special. Other telltale indicators include double date digits, especially the 1 and 9, and a crisp, elevated ridge around the rim. Since only a few thousand of these were struck before the dies were retired, they're exceptionally scarce. In a market that rewards rarity, documented auction records for the 1970 DDR-001 have soared. In recent years, top-graded specimens, those assessed as mint state with proof-like surfaces, have fetched upwards of $25,000. An MS65 DDR-001 sold for $26,400 at heritage auctions in 2021, setting a new benchmark. Even examples with minor contact marks or slightly softer doubling can command four-figure sums. An MS63 might still bring in $6,500 or more. For circulated coins that retain clear doubling, prices start around $1,200, though the finest worn pieces have changed hands closer to $3,000. The premiums reflect not just the mirror-like surfaces or sharp devices, but the undeniable excitement of owning a minting mistake that few people ever get to see. What makes the 1970 penny even more intriguing are the lesser-known stories that give it character. One collector recounted finding a DDR-001 in a circulating roll purchased from a small-town bank in Ohio, a genuine treasure buried among everyday change. Another coin dealer once displayed an MS67 example with such reflective fields that visitors mistook it for a proof until they saw the P mint mark. Rumor has it that a handful of these errors slipped straight into change drawers at grocery stores, meaning there could still be undiscovered specimens lurking in piggy banks around the country. These anecdotes fuel the sense of adventure that draws seasoned collectors back to the table time and again. Beyond the famed double die, condition plays a massive role in determining a 1970 penny's value. In uncirculated grades, the difference between a worn-looking coin and one with a fully intact, satiny mint luster can be tens of thousands of dollars. A proof like MS66 DDR-001 is essentially the unicorn of 1970 pennies, a flawless mirror finish with blazing cartwheel effect under a magnifying lens. Conversely, a heavily circulated example with only faint traces of doubling might still hold a five-figure value if it shows clear remnants of the error. In circulated grades below about VF30, prices dip to a few $100s, but spotting one of those in a change roll still represents a windfall. If you're evaluating condition, watch out for common pitfalls: contact marks on Lincoln's cheek, scratches across the wheat stalks, and the dreaded milk spots. those opaque white blemishes caused by planchet impurities. Collectors who pursue top grades often send their candidates to grading services like PCGS or NGC, where professional graders assign a numerical grade from 1 to 70. An MS64 can be worth twice as much as an MS63, and leaping to MS65 often doubles the value again. The key is balancing the cost of grading against the potential upside in market price, a gamble that has paid off handsomely for many. The metal composition of 1990s pennies gets a lot of attention, but 1970 input materials had their own quirks. These cents were struck on bronze planchets, 95% copper, 5% zinc, and tin, giving them a rich reddish hue, especially in high grades. Over time, natural toning can produce everything from deep chestnut to olive brown surfaces, each pattern unique to the individual coin. Collectors sometimes prize coins with lightly chocolatey hues, viewing them as aesthetically superior to bright red examples. However, cleaning or polishing can destroy that patina, plummeting the value regardless of underlying rarity. Patience and proper storage are essential to let that natural beauty develop. An unexpected twist involves over-polished trial die impressions that created ultra-rare test strikes. A small number of 1,970 patterns were produced on special planchets for evaluation, some with off-metal compositions, others struck at higher pressures. These experimental pieces occasionally appear at auction, but true authentic examples are so scarce that survival rates remain a mystery. If one of these pattern strikes ever shows up in a dealer's case, it would likely shatter all existing price records, simply because the numismatic community has never seen enough to establish a standard value. Discovering a valuable 1970 penny is a blend of sharp eyes, patience, and just a touch of luck. Whether you're hunting through circulated pocket change or carefully inspecting high-grade coins on online marketplaces, knowing the signature features, sharp doubling, intact mint luster, pristine fields, will help you separate run-of-the-mill cents from numismatic masterpieces. And while the big headline grabbers are the DDR001 errors, remember that even ordinary full red examples graded MS66 can command prices north of $200. Thanks to their brilliant surfaces and demand from color specialist collectors. All of this sets the stage for the next part of our journey, where we'll shift gears to another year that's captivated penny hunters, the 1982 1-cent errors and varieties. But before we turn that corner, take a moment to appreciate what you've learned about the 1970 penny, its place in history, the magic of die doubling, and the thrilling chase for pristine examples. If you've got one of these in your collection or coin jar, give it a closer look. You might be holding more than just spare change. Whenever you run across that curious ghosting on Lincoln's profile, remember it's not a flaw. It's a story waiting to be told. Now that we've peeled back the mysteries of the 1970 cent, let's shift our focus to an even more transformative year in penny production. By 1982, rising copper prices forced the U.S. Mint into uncharted territory, and what came out of Philadelphia and Denver that year were coins unlike anything collectors had seen before. The modest Lincoln head penny suddenly became a laboratory of material experiments and minting anomalies, offering a treasure trove of varieties that draw seasoned numismatists like moths to a flame. At the heart of the 1982 saga lies the abrupt switch from solid bronze planchets to zinc core cents clad with a thin copper layer. Early in the year, millions of copper blanks had already been made and released for striking. Mid-year, facing soaring copper costs, the Mint introduced new zinc planchets, 95% zinc with a 2.5 mil copper plating. That transition didn't happen overnight. For a brief window, both copper and zinc cents rolled through the presses together, creating an overlapping population of two chemically distinct coins sharing the same date and design. Holding a 1982 penny in your hand, you're literally touching minting history caught in mid-evolution. Identifying whether a 1982 cent is copper or zinc requires a simple weight test or a drop in hydrochloric acid, but many errors betray themselves visually. Copper cents weigh about 3.11 grams, while zinc pieces tip the scale at just 2.5 grams. Under magnification, the copper layer on zinc cents may show faint edge breaks or peels revealing a silvery interior. Collectors prize the copper issues for their solidity, Uncirculated 1982 large date copper cents graded MS66 red bring as much as $2,500. Zinc cents, though more plentiful, still command a premium when full reddish and flawless. An MS67RD zinc on a near impossible RD designation plate can fetch $1,200 or more. Beyond the metal swap, 1982 produced several key varieties that keep specialists awake at night. The large date and small date varieties, found at both mints, turn on the spacing and shape of the 8 and the position of the 2 relative to the rim. On the small date, the digits sit closer to the rim with a narrower, more angular 2, while the large date features a broader 2 set slightly lower. Adding a D mint mark into the mix yields 4 distinct collectible types: 1982 large date P, 1982 small date P, 1982 large date D, and 1982 small date D, that every advanced collector needs to master. Auction records reflect just how hot these date varieties have become. In 2024, a PCGS-graded MS68RD 1982 small date P sold for $18,750, shattering previous highs and confirming that top-quality red coins are in short supply. An equally brilliant MS67RD 1982 large date D crossed the block for $5,500 at Heritage Auctions, evidence that even the D-mint offerings can crack 5 figures with the right eye appeal. Circulated small date pieces in VF30 can start around $15, while heavily worn large date specimens still hold a collectible premium of $5 to $10. Errors add another layer of intrigue to the 1982 story. Off-center strikes from both Philadelphia and Denver produced coins with as much as 15% of the design missing, the remainder floating askew in a visible blank border. A 1982 off-center cent missing Lincoln's jawline and all of the reverse wreath can sell for $1,000 in mint state condition. Even minor off-centers, just a millimeter or two, can bring $200 in higher grades. Then there are lamination errors, where planchet impurities cause the copper layer to flake or blister, creating ghostly patches of raw zinc underneath. Collectors prize these for their dramatic appearance, with top lamination error examples selling for $400 to $600 in uncirculated grades. An especially rare anomaly from that year is the 1982 double die obverse. Unlike the dramatic doubling seen in 1970, the 1982 DDO is subtle, slight doubling on Lincoln's cheek, part of the ear, and faint swelling of the letters and in God We Trust. Only a handful of these surfaced, and they receive intense scrutiny when they appear at auction. An MS65 DDO sold for $4,800 in late 2023, while an MS63 example brought $2,200, prices that reflect both the error's scarcity and the sharp eyes required to spot it. The real excitement, however, comes from the crossplate zinc pieces. Early test zinc cents used experimental plating thicknesses, some barely hugging the underlying core. A few of these trial strikes exhibit partial plating or unusual banding, where the copper layer varies in thickness across the surface. These test coins are so rare that even seasoned dealers can't put firm numbers on their survival rates. Rumor has it that no more than a dozen or so have ever been certified, and when one appears at auction, it's expected to obliterate all pricing records simply because collectors don't know what to bid. Of course, the general condition spectrum matters here just as much as it did with 1970 errors. A brilliant, untuned MS66 zinc-plated cent with untouched cartwheel luster might bring $1,500, while a copper large date MS66 red strikes closer to $3,000. The slightest friction mark on Lincoln's cheek or a tiny bag mark on the reverse wheat stalk can drop a coin into the mid-4-figure range. Even coins graded MS64 or MS63 can be valuable. An MS63 zinc-plated small date RD might sell for $350, compared to $200 for its large date counterpart. Collectors also share stories that underscore just how easy it is to miss these treasures. One dealer recounted finding a flawless 1982 small date D in a stock book labeled simply 1982 cents. The coin gleamed so brightly against the dull steel wheeler circulation pieces that it looked like a proof, except for the satin-like finish and lack of frosting on raised areas. Another hobbyist discovered a nearly perfect off-center zinc cent in a batch of eBay bulk lots. It went unnoticed until he spotted the raw silver-gray edge peeking through under a loupe. For condition-based value variations, bear in mind that color designation is everything. The RD, RB, and BN labels, red, red-brown, and brown, can mean wildly different price points. A brown large-date zinc cent graded MS65BN might only fetch $150, whereas its full red counterpart in the same grade could approach $1,200. The primary culprit for color change is improper storage. Coins packed in PVC flips can develop a greenish hue, severely denting their value even if the surfaces remain pristine. As with any modern zinc-clad penny, the plating thickness tends to thin around high points over time. Lincoln's cheek and hair can develop tiny bald spots, revealing the zinc core. Collectors sometimes prize these spot-marked examples for their visual drama, but most agree that original, unblemished plating is preferable. To preserve that delicate copper sheath, store coins in inert holders, away from humidity and extreme temperature shifts. When assessing a 1982 penny for potential investment, consider third-party grading. The market reward for a PCGS or NGC MS67RD small date P can be double that of an ungraded equivalent. Grading fees typically range from $25 to $50 depending on declared value, so it pays to budget accordingly. Many collectors have found that a single high-grade small date P can finance their grading costs for a dozen lesser coins. All these factors make the 1982 cent a dynamic playground for advanced collectors. Metal transitions, date varieties, die errors, off-center strikes, lamination issues, and test plate anomalies. It's a year that transformed the humble penny into a numismatic kaleidoscope. If you're sorting through rolls or examining high-grade registry sets, pay attention to weight, edge detail, and die characteristics, and you could unveil a piece worth far more than its face value. As you contemplate your next acquisition, remember that the 1982 penny is more than a tiny copper-clad disc. It's a snapshot of economic pressures, minting ingenuity, and the delicate dance between metal markets and hobbyist passion. Whether you pursue a flawless, bright zinc-plated small date or chase the ghostly remnants of early lamination errors, every example tells a story of transition, and every hold in hand brings that story vividly to life.